With all of the DLC covered, I decided to put all 3 videos together as a compilation of my full opinions on the DLC, as a bonus upload for those who want it. More new videos are coming, so stay tuned for those. Anyways, let's get on with this essentially a movie. For this video, I'm going to be picking apart every Wave 1 and 2 track individually, stating what I like and dislike on them. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate every track, and this is apparent with the first track in the DLC, Paris Promenade. Promenade? I don't give a fuck. Now I'll be honest, I am not a fan of the tour tracks in the slightest. I think they're all complex to play on at first, and none of them are particularly interesting to play. But one of the least of these is definitely Paris Promenade. I think it's a solid track, although I'd much rather any other track had taken its place. It's cool that you go backwards on the last lap, but to be honest, because the whole track feels very samey, it's not overly noticeable. Hell, I hadn't even noticed until I was told. It's a lot more noticeable in another track, which I will touch on later. Overall, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Not great, but better than most of the other tour tracks. Toad Circuit is the next track that was added in the DLC, and it's fine. It's a very boring choice for a track, and if they wanted a basic circuit to be in the game, Wii Daisy Circuit, GCN Luigi Circuit, or hell, even 3DS Mario Circuit would have probably been a lot more interesting. Toad Circuit isn't the worst circuit in the game, and at least they added this over a GBA circuit, which would have ended up using the horrible music from GBA Mario Circuit in the base game. Toad Circuit, however, heavily displays a big issue with the DLC tracks. They all take their layouts and textures from Mario Kart Tour. The texture work is fine in Tour, as it's a mobile game, being run on systems that are much less powerful compared to the Switch. The Switch is a lot more powerful and can handle better models and textures. Hell, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has tracks as stunning as N64 Rainbow Road, Wario's Gold Mine, Mute City and Tick-Tock Clock. So to go from tracks with such incredible visuals and then start playing on this, it's no competition. The base game tracks are just better looking. Why anyone would want to play on Toad Circuit over Mario Kart Stadium, when Mario Kart Stadium not only plays better, but also looks incredible? I couldn't tell you. Overall, I give it a 2 out of 10. It could have been fine, but it was never going to rank high. Choco Mountain also suffers from the same issue, and while Choco Mountain has been improved visually, something about it just doesn't have the same charm as the original, or even the DS remake. I don't know if it's the cave, or the glider section, or just how different it is. This might just be me, but I don't think having overly big changes to this track made it better. Of course, I don't hate it, I just prefer the original much more, but I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It's alright. Coconut Mall is... right, this is something else entirely. Coconut Mall was a retro track from Mario Kart 7. As far as I'm aware, we've never seen a case of a track coming back as a retro track 2 games in a row prior to this DLC. Actually no, tell a lie, SNES Rainbow Road was the first case of this. This isn't an anomaly in the DLC either. A lot of the tracks coming back were retros in 7. Considering this was the game prior to Mario Kart 8, they could have definitely left it out in place for another track that has never come back as a retro track, like Wario Colosseum or Toad's Factory. But I guess since this track was overrated as hell, it was a good way to secure sales on the DLC, so I guess it made sense to bring back. But how well did they do it? Well, they didn't. Coconut Mall was absolutely butchered in the remake. Not only does it have the same issues of using its model from Tour, it also has so many details that I don't like at all. For starters, the escalators were replaced with these conveyor belts. You know, instead of the escalators that would have made sense to be in a mall. The mall also feels very empty in comparison. The shops feel like they lack life, and considering that tracks like Mario Kart Stadium and Yoshi Circuit added so much life to the tracks, I can't help but feel slightly disappointed when Coconut Mall is so empty. They also appear to have fixed up the track, adding fully constructed turns instead of the metal that was in the original. While I get why it was done, and I get why someone would like it, it removes the charm that Coconut Mall had in the first place, just like Choco Mountain. Although the pixel art is kinda cool. I like the glider ramp and the cars in the yard which have Shy Guy. Right, I love Shy Guy, but actually, I'm not too bothered by the lack of Miis. It was clear on the Switch that Miis played a much lesser role, and it's understandable that the Miis wouldn't be driving in these cars. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if Miis didn't return for the next Nintendo console. And now that the cars move, I really don't mind this. It's the other changes that make it bad. While it for sure boosted the sales of the DLC, I can't see why everyone rushes to choose this track over something like Wario Stadium. 3 out of 10. It would have ranked worse, but at the very least, at least it's still Coconut Mall. The next track is the second tour track in the DLC, Tokyo Blur. Okay, right off the bat, I'm disappointed. A lot of the tour tracks have alliteration in their names. Paris Promenade, Los Angeles Laps, Sydney Sprint, but Tokyo Blur? Really? And I think this is the Japan track. Tokyo Blur is probably one of the most forgettable tracks in the game. It does very little. It is extremely linear, provides little to no exploration, and it's just boring to play on. I wish I could say more, but there's so little to talk about with this track that it's hard to find anything interesting to say. I mean, hell, there is one singular shortcut in this entire track. The rest of your gameplay is down to taking tight turns. It's dull, forgettable, I'm not a fan. 1 out of 10. It exists, and I don't like it. After that mess though, we have the first track that has never returned as a retro track before until now. Shroom Ridge is one of my favourite DS tracks, and it is... fuck, it's shit, isn't it? Once again, it has tour graphics. This is just extremely disappointing, especially seeing how good tracks like Toad's Turnpike and Yoshi's Circuit look. Not only that, but why are the cars going the same way? In the original, the cars drive on the left-hand side of the road, like how we do in the UK. But why are they going the same way? Why are they ignoring traffic laws? This isn't even a nitpick either. This straight up makes the track easier to play, and it's just not nearly as fun anymore. The additional shortcut and glider ramp are nice though, but not enough to save how boring this track is to play on Switch. 3 out of 10. It could have ranked a lot higher if it weren't for the weird traffic laws. Now you've heard me complain a lot in this video, but all of what I've just said is going to seem tame compared to the next track. This track is GBA Sky Garden. Sky Garden is my favourite GBA track. I love it in Super Circuit, and I really love it in DS. So when I heard that it was going to be in the DLC, I was hopeful. I was very interested to see what they would do with what the actual fuck is this. Now I've talked about tracks using their tour models before, which is something I can definitely look past, but not with Sky Garden. Why? Because this is not Sky Garden. The layout on this version is completely different. This was done because Mario Kart Tour couldn't make the sharp turns present in Sky Garden. Oh, but Boo Lake is fine. Not only that, the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe can make the sharp turns. So what gives? Why is it different? Not only that, but the track is ridiculously short now. Once again, because the layout was taken from Tour. And if all of that wasn't enough, the bright turquoise brick road was replaced with this bland, boring red brick road. This was different in Tour too, being a grey brick road. Why did they make this change? Like, if they insisted on this layout, why change the bricks to something worse than the grey? Like, I don't like the grey either, but why change it to red? This just makes things worse. The turquoise road was iconic. It gave Sky Garden the uniqueness and majestic atmosphere and charm that it had. The remake in Tour and 8 Deluxe is just bland, boring, and not Sky Garden. I'm even hesitant to call it Sky Garden 2. This also worries me a lot, thinking about the future. If Sky Garden were to come back in the future, would it keep this layout? Or would it return to the original layout? Maybe DS will permanently be the best variation of Sky Garden because of this change, and I hate it so much. 0 out of 10. I can't believe I've just said that about Sky Garden, but I did, and I'm not sorry about it. However, we now move on to one of the better tracks in the DLC. Ninja Hideaway is a track that I actually really enjoy playing on. It has an interesting layout, fun shortcuts, and hell, it doesn't look terrible. Granted, if it were in the main game, it would have looked 10 times better. I don't doubt that for a second. But this is the first track in the DLC that I'll happily call good, although I do not understand why this is an out of bounds section. And this turn can be really annoying sometimes, especially on 200cc. But overall, I like it. 8 out of 10. If these few issues I had with the track weren't as prominent, it could easily be a 9 or even a perfect 10 out of 10. I like it. And that wraps up Wave 1 of the DLC. Overall, I'll rank this wave at 4 out of 10. While it established what the DLC was going to entail going forward, the fact that there's only one track that I can confidently say is good really hurts it. Especially as more waves come out, this wave was just heavily outclassed, and will likely continue to be. Wave 2 opens with a track, I guess. New York Minute is... fuck, it's lacking alliteration too. I will admit, the music in New York Minute is top tier. Something about it is just really nice to listen to. And today I learned you can't just Google New York Minute without finding a movie from 2004 and a song by Eagles. Anyways, while New York Minute doesn't have nearly as much linearity as Tokyo Blur, considering it has optional glider ramps and a few shortcuts, it's still not got much. I do like the references to Broadway and the red carpet on the final lap, but even with all of this, the only thing that boosts it is its music, not to mention the name, New York Minute. I guess any longer than a minute would be heinous and not allowed. Again, the lack of alliteration bugs me. Most of the tour tracks seem to have this naming scheme, so the ones that break it are gonna stand out. Maybe this is why I have such an issue with the track being called Music Park instead of Melody Motorway. I don't know, this track just feels stale. 4 out of 10. Would have been lower if it weren't for the music. The next track is... okay, is every second track in every wave going to be a basic bitch circuit? Although this one is miles worse than Toad Circuit. Mario Circuit 3... ugh, we've really seen this track again. For those of you who don't know, we have actually seen every single SNES Mario Circuit track in Super Mario Kart as a retro track. Mario Circuit 1 was in DS, Mario Circuit 2 was in 7, and Mario Circuit 3 was in Wii. But there is actually a Mario Circuit 4, which I don't know why I hyped up so much considering it's a SNES Mario Circuit. But my point is, why is it that we've seen every single Mario Circuit track, but not this one? Seriously, what is so good about Mario Circuit 3 that it warranted being in the DLC? Not only that, but it is the only SNES track that we've gotten so far. And as someone who really likes the SNES tracks, why this? Ghost Valley has only returned once, and there are 2 other variations of them. SNES Bowser Castle hasn't returned at all, and neither has Vanilla Lake. Although Vanilla Lake is shit, so fair enough. Choco Island 1 hasn't returned either, and neither has Cooper Beach 1. Okay, real talk here, what the hell is up with that? Mario Kart 7 added the ability to go underwater. It's a nice addition, and definitely adds some atmosphere to the game. And do you know how many retro tracks had underwater sections that made sense with the original tracks instead of being forced? I'll tell you. 4! Daisy Cruiser had this puddle, which is more of a quality of life thing than adding to the track at all. I mean, it had the engine room too, but I don't really like that because of how little it makes sense for a boat's engine room to be flooded. Donut Plains 3 has its small lake, which is fine. It's nice, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing major. GCN's Sherbetland is the best by far, adding a whole new track under the original. And Chi Chi Beach made it so driving through the water actually made sense, though it's debatable whether the underwater sections are new in this track. The other retros with underwater sections were either forced as hell, like Dry Dry Desert and Wario Stadium, or were from 7, like Piranha Plant Pipeway and DK Jungle. Cooper Beach 1 would be a perfect way to fix this. It could be probably one of the best SNES tracks in the entire game if it were added. So why was Mario Circuit 3 added? Considering, once again, we saw it in Wii already, as opposed to all of the other SNES tracks that we haven't seen before that are miles better. But ignoring this, Mario Circuit is fine, I guess, but I can't help but feel disappointed. 2 out of 10. This cup does redeem itself slightly with Calamari Desert. I'll admit, I think that Mario Kart 64's selection of tracks is a little bit wank, but it has some good tracks too, one of which being Calamari Desert. This track I actually think didn't get overly fucked by tour graphics. Don't get me wrong, it could look miles better, but it could also look like Toad Circuit or Shroom Ridge. The change in the track between laps is really well done, and while I'm not a fan of the red ramps visually, I think they serve their purpose well. I also like how the train is shorter, meaning you won't be stuck waiting for the train to pass, which is an issue I had with the original track and even the retro in 7. This is definitely one of my favourite tracks in the DLC, and while it was a retro in 7 also, I don't think it's as bad here considering the fact that it isn't as overrated as some of the other 7 retros. A good track overall that doesn't get boring. 8 out of 10. Could have definitely been a 10 out of 10, and likely would be if it were in the base game instead of the DLC. And the final track in the Turnip Cup is one of the most beloved tracks in Mario Kart overall. This track being Waluigi Pinball. This track was destined to be in the DLC, even if it was a retro track in 7. And while I think the Waluigi Pinball is heavily overrated, like, guys, chill out, there were better DS tracks. I still don't mind its inclusion. Considering the fact that Wario Stadium was in the base game, they didn't have to make a new remix for Waluigi Pinball, as they could just use the same song. And while I know some people were disappointed with it, I personally think it's fine. If anything, it was to be expected. Although all of my issues with the original track are all prominent here. This track is extremely linear, with no shortcuts and little to no dangers outside of the pinballs. When you get to the main pinball part of the track, at the very end, you're finally met with some danger though, seeing as the pinballs roll around here. It's fine, I guess, but I will say this. I do like how the track has unique sound effects, like the item roulette, the cannon, and the ending of the track. Oh, wait, what? It's not there? Hold up, let me just play the versions from DS and 7 for you. Notice anything? What's weird about this is that all the other unique sounds from Waluigi Pinball are present, so why is it that this sound was removed? This was the sound that I was looking for when this track came out, and God was I disappointed when this track didn't contain it. 5 out of 10. Even though I have a lot of gripes with this track, they were present in all other versions of this track, and at the very least, it is still Waluigi Pinball. Hot take though, Wario Stadium's better. The next track is once again another tour track. Sydney Sprint is... okay, this is some great music. Sydney Sprint isn't nearly as linear as the other tour tracks, especially when you get to the beach, so it's definitely a plus. It's got tour graphics, but to be honest, most of the tracks do, so I'll likely not mention it unless the track gets really fucked by it like Shroom Ridge did. I get why the linearity is a thing, considering tour controls like it does, but considering the fact that Mario Kart 8 is a different game, and retro tracks typically capitalise and change the track to fit the game they're brought back to, the tour tracks could definitely be less linear. Like, this could be a shortcut, but it's just not. But it's one of the better tour tracks, so I don't mind it. 5 out of 10. The next track that we got is our second track that we've never seen before as a retro. Snowland is honestly one of the worst GBA tracks, but it is really good in the DLC. I'm a sucker for the way the GBA tracks are revamped. Ribbon Road is probably my favourite retro track of all time, so I'm happy to see any GBA track in the DLC at all, even if it has tour graphics, as long as it doesn't do what Sky Garden did. And Snowland didn't do that. It got a base game revamp, which is really nice. It got one of the most unique shortcuts, which honestly feels like a Mario Kart Wii shortcut, so it's oddly nostalgic to me. It's a simple track, but somehow it stands out to me. Probably one of the best ice tracks in the series. 7 out of 10. Next up, we have yet another retro track from 7. Noticing a pattern? Mushroom Gorge is another track that... okay, this one is actually really overrated. I don't have a massive issue with it being present in the DLC, it's just... come on, Toad's Factory was right there! I can't help but feel disappointed that all of these overrated tracks were added over the tracks that I'll say are better, despite the fact that they were in the game just before Mario Kart 8. I don't know, it feels cheap. But as a track, Mushroom Gorge works well, although it was definitely better in Wii because of the way tricking works in Wii. It's better than it was in 7, don't get me wrong, and the gap cut is possible, which is nice. But I can't help but feel like this was a basic choice to boost sales over choosing a better track. Not only that, but this track got hit hard by tour graphics and I don't like it, especially the cave. 5 out of 10. Would have been lower if it weren't for the fact that it's still a good track to play. The final track in Wave 2 is actually a Nitro track, which is interesting. Sky High Sunday appears to be quite an interesting track, but I am not a fan. Looking at its layout, it really just looks like a glorified Excitebike arena, which is another track that I don't like. The track itself is fine to play, the theme is nice, but if you get shocked at all before the section, then say goodbye to your chances of first. It's straight up impossible to get past these floating platforms so small, and it is ridiculously cheap. For this being the first Nitro track, it is kind of disappointing. 2 out of 10. Would have been better if it wasn't just Excitebike with extra steps, and Sweet Sweet Canyon is better. You know you fucked up when you're worse on a Mushroom Cup track. And that wraps up the second wave of the Booster Course Pass. Overall, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It gets a slight edge over the first wave, simply because most of the tracks are better than the first wave selection. Although, there are a lot of issues that I have with the tracks, most being shit that I can't look past, like the lack of the iconic sound in Waluigi Pinball or the linearity of New York Minute. It's painfully mid, and that is basically as high as I feel I can rank it. Wave 3 opens up with another tour track. Christ, these are getting stale. This time, it is London Loop. Now, as someone from the UK, I was intrigued to see what they would do with this track. I haven't ever played Mario Kart Tour, so I hadn't seen the original. So, what was my thoughts on it? Is this meant to be Tower Bridge? Because it doesn't look anything like it. The London Eye is present. Right, where's Build-A-Bear? It's accurate to London, though I'm noticing a severe lack in Matilda. Right, I'm being too British. Time to move on before I start to pat my pockets to check if everything's there before getting up and leaving. London Loop, while it has some split paths, is still very linear, although the split paths that are present are pretty nice. The open parks provide some areas for mushroom shortcuts, although it is slightly annoying that this one requires 2. And aside from the essential massive straightaway in lap 3, the track does feel pretty fun to play on. It's definitely one of the more linear tracks, but the changes in the laps feel really smooth. And I can't be the only one to feel like this music is a few chants and squid lines away from being a convincing Splatoon track. Overall, it's a nice track, probably one of the better tour tracks, 6 out of 10. The next track in the DLC is Boo Lake. Now, when I heard that Boo Lake was being added, I was scared. I saw what they did to Sky Garden, however, seeing that they also heavily improved Snowland, I had no idea what to expect. Especially since this was a track that I wanted in the DLC, so I was very worried. But when it finally came to the game, I was not disappointed. Boo Lake was improved drastically from the original. First, it's a lake now, which was an issue that I had with the original, but now there's water. And it was utilised perfectly, especially in the underwater sections with the fish bones. It genuinely has a creepy atmosphere, and I like it a lot. Also, this is the first track in the DLC to actually utilise anti-gravity, excluding Sky High Sunday because it was active for the whole track. I'm surprised that it took them this long to add it, but at the same time I'm glad they didn't. It shows they're listening, and tracks won't be straight up rips from tour going forward. Also, this track looks great. If I didn't know any better, I'd think this was a base game track. And Nintendo finally listening? Are tracks gonna stop looking like they were made out of Play-Doh? I don't know, but it's safe to say that this is the best track in the DLCs so far. 9 out of 10. Very little is stopping it from being a perfect 10 out of 10. It's mainly the fact that as a track, it does perform slightly worse than tracks like Ribbon Road. The next track in the third wave is Alpine Pass, also known as Rock Mountain outside of Europe. For some reason, I'll stick with Alpine Pass because it doesn't sound as fucking stupid. And it... Fuck's sake, I spoke too soon. It looks like it was made out of Play-Doh. Shit. This track has remained exactly the same as it was in 7, apart from the anti-gravity section, which was honestly to be expected. It's got a gliding section at the end, which makes the second lap a lot more interesting as you can glide over these pipes. It's not a bad track, it's just nothing overly interesting. Plus it was a letdown, especially considering how Boo Lake looks. 4 out of 10. The next track is another track that, while lesser, is still pretty overrated. Maple Treeway was... Wait, this is another 7 retro track. This track is probably the worst iteration of Maple Treeway out there. Firstly, the track feels very green. The original was way less saturated, and it complemented the autumn aesthetic very well. Now it feels like these colours clash a lot, and this track can't really decide whether it's autumn or spring. This becomes mostly apparent on the log branches, where the tree just has these weird moss patches that just feel out of place. The reintroduction of half pipes is pretty nice though, but what isn't nice is the glider ramp at the end of the track. This removed the flowy bridge, which was one of my favourite parts about this track. It was also a part of the theming of the track too, which makes me even sadder that it was removed. Besides, they already had a glider section, so it's not like they were starved for one. Overall, this track just feels empty compared to the original. Whether it's something simple like the smaller houses in the background being removed, or just straight up track parts not being present, Maple Treeway just feels empty and lacking of the life that it had in Wii. 3 out of 10. The next track is yet another tour track. How many more of these are there? Berlin Byways is quite linear, but it does have occasions where paths are split and shortcuts are open. And hey, this track has cars too, which makes the track feel like it has much more life. Although, just like Shroom Ridge, they do ignore traffic laws. Berlin Byways is pretty forgettable for me though, even if it has the cars. But I guess it's not terrible, plus the music slaps, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Next up is a track that was in DS, and therefore I have very strong opinions on it. Peach Gardens is a track that I love a lot, and when I first saw it, I thought, shit, it's been tourified again. It seems that any grassy track is a struggle for them, as tracks like Calamari Desert and Boo Lake are fine, but then tracks like Toad Circuit, Shroom Ridge, and of course, Peach Gardens are hit a lot harder by tour graphics. But overall, Peach Gardens feels empty. They had the opportunity to go wild, making a large, fancy royal garden with every plant known to man. But instead, it feels like they did the opposite. The tall flower beds in the original and the Wii remake were removed for flat patches of flowers, and at points they feel like they were brushed to the side as opposed to being a prominent part of the track. The giant piranha plant just doesn't feel right at all compared to the giant hedges. These hedges are noticeably missing throughout the whole track and it just feels wrong, once again removing the charm that the original had. This part of the track also just feels empty. There used to be so many big trees, but now it's just an open field. Why? Also, what happened to the ramp? Why remove that? At first I was not a big fan of the giant hedges of Peach, Luigi, Toad and Toadette, but once I got to the final lap and we began to race backwards, I liked it a lot more, as this became a glider section. While I would much prefer reverse races to be its own separate thing, like mirror mode, I can appreciate the experimentation with reverse tracks similarly to Paris Promenade, but the track itself on many parts feels empty. They could have done a lot more but chose not to, and I can't help but find it disappointing. 4 out of 10. Now I've ragged a lot on the tracks in the DLC in these videos, but the next track is another good one. Merry Mountain, looking at the layout, looks like it's going to be a pretty boring track. I mean, look at that straight away. But in reality, it's actually a really good track. You start off by driving up the mountain with a sleigh taking off and flying over the track with you. The atmosphere is amazing and it really feels festive. Perfect time for the holidays too. The usage of half pipes here are perfect. You can either take the turn tight and save time, or go wide and get an item. Then going down the mountain, you can hit other racers, the spinny boost poles, or whatever, to gain speed during the anti-gravity, and then take the glider ramp on the second lap. It's a thrill to play on, and I really like it. 8 out of 10. I'll rag on Tour a lot, but it has some good nitro tracks. And finally, the last track we have so far is, of course, 3DS Rainbow Road. Those of you who saw my video on my rankings of every Rainbow Road track already know my opinions on them, so if you want me to go in depth as to my opinions on it, then I'll leave a link on the end cards for you, or you can check the description for the link to the video. But in short, I ranked 3DS Rainbow Road at 9th. I think the original was much better, ranking it at 5th, but this track is still solid, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Not my favourite Rainbow Road track, but it's far from the worst. And that wraps it up for Wave 3 of the DLC. Overall, I'll give this one a 7 out of 10. There's a noticeable improvement in the tracks visually if you forget that Alpine Pass exists, and the fact that the anti-gravity is actually being utilised makes me very happy, despite how little it actually does gameplay wise. Now, onto the most recent wave, Wave 4. Wave 4 opens up with another tour track, this time being Amsterdam Drift, and honestly, it's a visual upgrade. It doesn't look overly out of place compared to the base game tracks, just don't look at the grass. It's definitely one of the more interesting tour tracks with a very nice underwater section, and going backwards to see other racers drive past you will always be fun on any track. Although it's still a tour track, so it won't be crazy up high in my favourites, but it's still solid, 5 out of 10. The next track in the Fruit Cup is another GBA track. You all probably know my thoughts on the GBA track so far. So what do I think of GBA Riverside Park? Well, it's mid. I'm sorry. The layout is very similar, but still very much dumbed down. Like, where's this bit? What's wrong with this? It's the little details like this that really annoys me about the GBA remakes. It can't be that much of a hassle to add this part of the track. I mean, it would help break the straightaway. Looking at the track itself, it looks incredible though. It's definitely what I would expect from a GBA remake. The Tui's on the track are also... Tui? I'm just calling him Jerry. Jerry's are also really cool. A great addition that we haven't seen in any track yet, and the fact that they carry mushrooms gives them potential for blue shell dodges. Also, the cave and the waterfall are incredible. They really enhance the track. Overall, this track gets a 7 out of 10. If the layout was fixed, this would definitely be higher, but it really does suck to see Nintendo continuing to butcher the layouts of GBA tracks. It's not Sky Garden though. Sky Garden's still utter donkey nutsack. The next track that we're going to be looking at is a fan favourite track, DK Summit, or DK's Snowboard Cross. Okay, real talk, who the fuck named that? It's definitely one of the best tracks in Mario Kart history, but its remake? Well, I should probably say demake. It doesn't look terrible, but it does get hit hard by tall graphics, which is surprising seeing that Snowland was fine, and that was a whole 2 waves ago. The half pipes in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe are extremely janky, and are really hard to use effectively. Or maybe I'm just shit, that's possible as well. And while it isn't as noticeable on tracks like Maple Treeway and Merry Mountain, DK Summit's whole gimmick is the half pipes. This track is dedicated to them, so the fact that the half pipes play like shit makes this track in turn play like shit. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's still an okay track, but it could have been so much better if the half pipes were actually somewhat functional. Also, I just want to just appreciate 200cc on this track. It's bound to give anyone a brain aneurysm. The final track in the Fruit Cup is Yoshi's Island, and let me just say, this is the cutest track that we've ever seen in Mario Kart history. This is the first Yoshi themed track that we've seen since DS Yoshi Falls, which is far from a fan favourite. I'm a sucker for tracks based on previous Nintendo games like Airship Fortress, Hyrule Circuit and Tick Tock Clock, and seeing that I grew up playing Yoshi's Island DS, as well as being a Yoshi main in Mario Kart, I had high hopes. And fuck were those hopes met. The glider section feels so interactive, especially trying to hit this question cloud thing from Yoshi's Island 2, which opens up a shortcut. See, Nintendo? You don't have to use those ugly red bridges. Also, the coins. The coins have little Yoshi faces on them, and I couldn't love them more. There are so many little details about this track that I love, that if I went over all of them, most of this video would just be about Yoshi's Island. It really deserves its own appreciation video. 10 out of 10. Perfect track. My new favourite track, I'll say. I almost bought the DLC after playing this track. I'm not even joking. I love it that much. After the absolute banger that is Yoshi's Island, we move on to Bangkok Rush. Another tour track. And does it hold up to Yoshi's Island? Fuck no, like any track could. But for a tour track, it's actually surprisingly good. The different areas that you drive through are very unique. The boat lake thing at the start is cool, and the food stand next to the train tracks is also very interesting. It's unlike what we've seen on tracks like Super Bell Subway and Calamari Desert. The mid to late stages of the track give me big Mushroom City vibes, which is another track that I'm hoping for in the DLC. Also, the part where you jump off the food stalls is another interesting section of the track. Overall, Bangkok Rush is a very strong tour track, and if they were all like this, then I would have zero complaints about the tour tracks. 7 out of 10. Next up is DS Mario Circuit. I know a lot of people were disappointed when this was announced, as the leaks had promised Airship Fortress. But let's be real, the leaks are all fake. They all just say popular tracks that they know the community will piss themselves over. Plus, there was zero leaks saying anything about new characters until Birdo came out. Then all of a sudden, every leak started mentioning about how they knew every new character. Just quit listening to the leaks and take them all with a grain of salt. Anyways, about Mario Circuit, I already thought the DS Mario Circuit was one of the stronger Mario Circuit tracks, even saying that they should have taken Toad Circuit's place when Wave 1 initially came out. And I was not at all disappointed by the remake. The track plays out mostly the same, the fire piranha plants are back too, which is fun, but then all of a sudden we get thrown into a pine forest. This is new and wasn't in the original track. But oh wait, once you get to lap 3 there is... What the actual fuck? Who's this fucker? Why is this random ass Wiggler on the track? Is this hinting at Wiggler coming back as a playable character? Fuck knows, but I think I'm going to call him William. William was just such a weird surprise to see in this track, but I love his addition. It's really funny to me that they just had this asset from Maple Treeway and just decided to add it to this track. Overall, I give it an 8 out of 10. Considering it's the first time we've seen this track come back, it's definitely a good remake. And the music slaps. The next track is... How the hell have we gone 4 waves without having a GCN track? It is a track that I'm not overly happy was included. Waluigi Stadium has been seen twice now, once in Wii and again in 8 Deluxe, but its brotherly counterpart, Wario Coliseum, has never been seen in any Mario Kart game as a retro ever. I would have much preferred Wario Coliseum to come back before Waluigi Stadium got a second remake, but oh well. We got Waluigi Stadium, so how was it? Well, the issues that I have with DK Summit are also present here. The jankiness of the half pipes really knocks down this track a notch. It's mainly this that continues to solidify Wii's remake as the best version of this track. That and the piranha cutouts look very weird now as they're pointing upwards. This just makes this part of the track easier and I don't like it that much. Plus, there are no bouncy signs. Where are these? Where are these little fuckers? These little happy buggers. Visually, this track looks good. While it's definitely noticeable that it's a DLC track, unlike tracks like Boo Lake and Yoshi's Island, it's also not as bland as, say, Choco Mountain. Although it doesn't really give me dirt track vibes in the same way that the original did. But it's not all bad. The half pipes being janky doesn't affect the gameplay as much on this track as it does on DK Summit, and if you do bear through the pain of them, you can access split pathing, which is really cool. It gives this track more versatility, which is definitely a welcomed improvement. This track gets a 7 out of 10. Definitely better than Waluigi Pinball, but could be improved gameplay wise. And the final DLC track so far is another tour track? We got 3 this wave. Why? Oh, that's why, because Singapore Speedway is an actual fucking banger. I get it. First off, I want to say that this blends in with the base game tracks perfectly. It doesn't look like a piece of shit, which is a massive plus. This music is the best we've gotten from a tour track as well. Driving on top of the skyscraper and seeing Goombas going on the nightly leisurely swim is really cool. And driving through the fruit stands is cool too. It gives me Shy Guy Bazaar vibes. The glider sections on this track are really cool too. The mechanic is utilised perfectly. Also, these? Is this a hint at Toad's Factory finally getting in the DLC? I really hope so, because they already have the asset for it. Singapore Speedway and Bangkok Rush are incredibly good tracks, and getting both of them in the same wave was definitely a blessing. Singapore Speedway gets a 9 out of 10. And that is it for Wave 4 of the DLC. I'm going to be honest, this gets a solid 8.5 out of 10 for me. I don't really dislike any of the tracks in this wave, and I think that it's brought to me my new favourite Mario Kart track, being Yoshi's Island. The only thing stopping it from getting a perfect 10 out of 10 is the jankiness of some tracks and the layout of Riverside Park. Now, something I neglected to talk about in my previous episode was the addition of Birdo as a playable character. This slipped my mind entirely and I just forgot to mention it. But I do like Birdo, and I'm happy to see her finally get back into Mario Kart after so long, and all the different colours are interesting too. As far as I'm aware, this is the first time we've seen different coloured Birdos, though I think some of the colour schemes work better than others. And as for Wave 5's characters, we got 3. PT Piranha, which was basically guaranteed. I'm happy to see him again, as he's been absent since Double Dash. And as for the other 2, well, I have some very strong opinions on them. Now, I started playing Wiggler in Mario Kart 7 on a whim, and he very quickly became one of my favourite characters. And he will be the character that you will be seeing me play throughout the whole of this video. I just love him. Wiggler is the only character to have a unique animation upon getting hit, going into his angry form, and he quickly stole my heart, and I am so happy that he finally got into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Also, I fully predicted his inclusion in my last video, as I had it fully edited and uploaded before the Nintendo Direct, and had to delay the video due to my old PC giving out on me. But oh wait, once you get to lap 3 there is... What the actual fuck? Who's this fucker? Why is this random ass Wiggler on the track? Is this hinting at Wiggler coming back as a playable character? Fuck knows, but I think I'm gonna call him William. I was only half joking. But what took me out of my chair that day was the reveal of Kamek. Kamek has been a character I've wanted in the game for a long time now. He felt like he was robbed of a slot in so many games. Like, he really got left out to prioritise Baby Daisy and Honey Queen. But he's finally in, and I couldn't be happier to see him. Now, I don't have the DLC, but I do have fucking emulators, so I get to play these characters. Also, Wiggler on the Wild Wiggler is, it's something. The last 2 characters... Wait, there's 4? There's 4 new characters? Fuck me. The last 4 characters are Diddy Kong, which... Fuck yeah. Funky Kong, which was pretty predictable. Pauline, which was interesting, and who on God's green fuck are you? So overall, we had a good selection of new characters, and Peachette, and it's a good selection. There's a severe lack of Rob, but that was to be expected. Anyways, we have some tracks to talk about now, so let's get into them. The first track we have to talk about is Athens Dash. Now, I had actually played this track before, as I picked up Tour Around when it was released, and I thought it was alright. Athens is a lot more of an interesting place than, say, London or Paris. Maybe I just think that Europe is a bit boring. And the later tour tracks are a lot better than the earlier ones, so I didn't dislike it as much as the others. And Athens Dash is... Okay, hold up. I want to take a minute to figure out at what point the tour tracks became good. Well, Vancouver Velocity and LA Labs are the 5th and 6th city tracks respectively, more on them later. And since then, the tracks have steadily increased in quality, with tracks such as Singapore Speedway and Bangkok Rush. So I guess it was only after the first few that they got better. Athens Dash is a very recent track, and it really shows. It almost doesn't feel like a tour track. It feels like what I'd imagine my DK Temple track playing like from my video on the Mario Kart DS tracks. Link in description if you haven't seen that. The track also looks phenomenal. I'm so happy that the tracks in the later waves have finally been given the graphics that they deserve or be imported to a console Mario Kart game. I mean, the trees still very much look like Pokemon Sword and Shield in terms of shape, but at least the grass looks better than the pure coloured Animal Crossing grass we had in Toad Circuit and Alpine Pass. The split paths on this track are very cool as well, and the gliders, they're great. The music is also incredible, but I still think I prefer Singapore Speedway when it comes to the music, though I do have some slight nitpicks, mainly being that I can't see where I'm going over this ramp. And these doors are very narrow, which plays quite poorly in a 12-player online room, but the former is very easily learned and the latter I'll just cope with. Overall, I'd still rate this track a solid 8 out of 10. It's one of the strongest tour tracks to play, but it also has a few flaws. Plus, I don't overly love it in the same way that I do with tracks like Yoshi's Island or Boo Lake. The next track in the Feather Cup is Daisy Cruiser. Alright, yeah, this is a 7 retro. Figured we were done with this and would have given the chance to Mushroom City or something, but sure, whatever. To be fair, I don't even dislike Daisy Cruiser in any way. I do acknowledge my issue with the 7 retros is a massive nitpick bearing in mind the game's track selection, and therefore a complete non-issue, but I can be petty considering the base game GCN tracks kinda suck, and I want to see new shit. Anyways, Daisy Cruiser is a whole lot better than it was in Mario Kart 7. The quality of life waterfall was present, though this time it's a lot bigger and feels more like a key part to the track. The flooded engine room was also present, however it also acts as an aquarium, the 8 Deluxe port, with some Yoshis and Toads looking through the windows, so I think it works a lot better. The aquarium room is also worth taking sometimes due to the high amount of items you can get. The split paths are present in this version too, which is nice. And the music is so good. I don't even know how I didn't notice it at first. While the music for Daisy Cruiser isn't anything too special, especially when compared to the circuit theme or Mushroom City/Bridge, it's still a big improvement on the original. Overall, I'm going to rank this track a 7 out of 10. Daisy Cruiser is a good track overall, but I can't say I'm overly excited to see it over tracks like GCN Bowser Castle, Mushroom City or Wario Coliseum. The next track is one of my favourite tracks in Mario Kart Wii. Move Your Highway is a track that I would ask for if Toad's Factory was outright rejected, so I'm very happy to see it here, though my opinions on it are very mixed. What I love about it is that it's reintroduced the bomb car, which I do love. It kind of makes up for the lack of Mushroom City in the DLC, as it was first introduced there. Move Your Highway cars especially are a lot slower in the city section of the track in the 8 Deluxe version, which does lower the excitement of the high pace, high danger gameplay of the original track, and I can't be the only one who is disappointed by the lack of anti-gravity in this track. Like, having some anti-gravity on the walls that you could drive on would be nice, but unfortunately we didn't get it. The visuals on this track, while they do look good, still could look a lot better bearing in mind the track that it is. Overall, I'm going to rank this track a 6 out of 10. While I was very hyped for this track, I still acknowledge a few flaws of it and recognise that it could be miles better, but I still enjoy it a lot, so it's not complete horseshit in my eyes. The final track in the Feather Cup is a new track, Squeaky Clean Sprint. While I'm not sure I can call it one of the best new tracks in the DLC, I mean, that's a steep hill to climb, but you know. I also think that it's really good. The theming is on point with this track. The underwater sections are used to their fullest potential, with the bath being full, the plug being open, and the current of sucking water making this section high-paced and exciting to race in. I also love the attention to detail in this track, with things like the product branding being Mario related, a wedding ring being down the drains, the Biddy Bud clock, the Yoshi egg soap dispenser, just everything. I feel like every time I play this track I notice something new. It gives me Ribbon Road vibes in that regard. However, I do have gripes, like the fan blowing is a cool concept on paper, but it kinda gets annoying really quickly and ruins your lines a lot. Though I do overall like this track and I love how there's always more to it than I would have thought. Oh my god, wait, the mirror is in the shape of a mushroom, I love this. Yeah, this track is getting an 8 out of 10. Not quite a 10 out of 10, just due to personal preferences, but I do still enjoy it a lot. The next track in this wave is Los Angeles Laps, or LA Laps. Yeah, I'm calling it that. The original, I'm not gonna lie, kinda sucks ass. Unpopular opinion time. I'm happy the stupid fucking dog was removed from the soundtrack. I've heard a lot of people sad about the dog bark choir being removed, but I always hated it. Now the music is actually good. As for the track itself, I find it enjoyable to play. I like the inclusion of the Mario baseball reference and the split paths present in the construction site. I don't have many flaws with this track, but I also feel like it's not as exciting or interesting as some of the other tour tracks, so I've got less to say on it. To be honest, I haven't got much to say about most tour tracks, as try as they might, they do still feel very samey, so it's hard for them to stand out when there's so many of them. I'll give it a 6 out of 10 though. It's a nice track. The next track we have to talk about is GBA Sunset Wilds. Okay, a GBA track. So my first thought is, How's the layout? Oh good. So we're looking at a D make. That's always a good start. This track is one of the better GBA tracks, so I had high hopes for it. And overall, I'm not sure how much more I could have asked for. I do like the grand rock arches, and the background to the track does look good. The mud puddles look like chocolate syrup though, not mud. Not sure how they managed that, but they did. But the main issue I have with the track is the fact that the track is literally called Sunset Wilds and yet fails to even have the one gimmick that gave it the name. How? And why? It was in Tour, so why not in 8 Deluxe? There's nothing really redeeming about this track anymore. It has a worse layout, it's not overly dynamic on the Z-axis, and lost the gimmick that made it stand out. Now it's just sand with rocks and dancing Shy Guys. Okay, the dancing Shy Guys are cool though, but not enough to save the track. The track is going to have to get a 2 out of 10. It just does nothing anymore. Granted, I don't hate it like I do with Sky Garden, but I struggle to find it fun. Next up, we're taking a look at possibly the most overrated track in the whole series, Wii Koopa Cape. Right, put your pitchforks down. I like this track, but I don't like the remakes of this track, so I am disappointed that it was included over Toad's Factory or Dry Dry Ruins. The original is just better than the remakes. In Mario Kart 7, we saw the addition of a glider ramp, which is absent in the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Wait, why was this removed? Did someone not like it? I'm confused. But what stayed is the underwater section. This section completely ruined the track. In the original, it felt like an aquarium, with rushing water and electric poles spinning to add more danger and thrill to the track. It's mainly what made this track stand out. In Mario Kart 7, this was changed to an underwater section with an open roof, which, while it made sense on paper, in practice it ended up destroying the track and what was good and fun about it. But when the 8 Deluxe remake came out, they had a chance to change it and make it better, which they did, by adding half pipes and anti-gravity. That helped, yeah. As much as it is better than it was in 7, I struggle to say that the track is something I'm excited and hyped for. Now it's just your average underwater track like Cheap Cheap Lagoon or Water Park, as opposed to having a unique twist on water tracks like Wario Shipyard or Dolphin Shoals. Add the token complaint of It's a 7 Retro, and you have a track that, like Sunset Wilds, I just struggle to care for. It's not bad, but I can't say I'm not disappointed. I'm going to give this track a 4 out of 10. Not bad, but I am picking Piranha Plant Pipeway over it. And the final track in Wave 6 is one that one Reddit guy was very happy about, Vancouver Velocity. I'm glad I did my research because I probably would have ended up calling this Vancouver Velocity. Yeah, I'm really shit at the English language. And I want to say that the track looks beautiful. It's what I expected from a track based on Vancouver. It perfectly captures Canada, being all snowy and shit. Yay, stereotypes. And the anti-gravity bridge is used beautifully. Is this the first case of an anti-gravity used in a city track? Not sure, but I like it. The park with the lake is cute too. And I like the references to Mario and Sonic with ice skating, reusing the assets of Shy Guys from Sherbet Land. The music is also incredible. I love the way the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe fuses different genres of music, and it's done perfectly in Vancouver Velocity, combining the typical classical instrument of violins with the electric modern instruments of synths. Overall, I give this an 8 out of 10. It's a good track, me likey. It stands out more compared to the other city tracks, and I like it a lot. And that concludes my opinions on Wave 5, the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC. This was very long overdue. Overall, I'm going to give this wave an 8 out of 10. It's a good one, but it's held back slightly by some of the more underwhelming tracks. With those being fixed, this wave could very much be bumped up a notch. Now, onto the final wave of this DLC. The first track of Wave 6 is Rome Avanti. You know I am going to be happy to not talk about tour tracks anymore, unless I decide to make a video on ranking the tour tracks. I'll consider it. Anyway, Rome Avanti. What the fuck does Avanti even mean? Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's a very good track. It starts off with a bang, going straight into the Colosseum, and after coming out of it, you go through some more ruins before entering the city itself. I think the way this track opens is beautifully done, and makes it very easy to get into. These stairs are really fun to drive up, and the way the roundabout is constantly reused in this track somehow works better than I could have expected. And in the third lap, you re-enter the Colosseum, and later some glider ramps appear that are very well done. The music isn't as upbeat as other tour tracks, so I struggle to remember it like I do with Singapore Speedway, London Loop, or Athens Dash, but the track more than makes up for it. Overall, I'm giving this track an 8 out of 10. It's good, I like it a lot. Only thing holding it back is the gameplay itself being slightly weaker than the other tracks, and the music. Next up, we have DK Mountain. Thank fuck this track got in over Dino Dino Jungle. And brilliantly it was implemented. As much as I would have preferred Mushroom City, I can't complain about DK Mountain. It's a good track. And I'll say it, they finally did it. They made the graphics on par with the base game. Like, look at this grass compared to Yoshi's Circuit. It's amazing. There's even like more colour to it. In a weird way, I like it. The gameplay is just as good as it was in Double Dash and Wii, though the gap jump shortcut has barriers over it for some... Oh, never mind, it's still possible. The music is incredible too. It feels very tailored to DK Mountain as well, with monkeys heard in the background, the volcano bubbling, and general wildlife sounds. As well as this, the overdubbing on the xylophone is something my ears liked a lot. Also, the wavy bridge is present, which I'm very happy about. They didn't take the Maple Tree Ray route with it, and it makes me very happy. Overall, I'll rank this track a 9 out of 10. It's very good in all aspects. The next track we have to talk about is Daisy Cruiser. Toad's Factory. Why has been betrayed? Over and over it gets fucked. Why Nintendo? Why? Right, okay, I'm done mourning. I'll hope for it in Mario Kart 9. Or Mario Kart X, apparently that's a thing now. Anyway, Daisy Circuit is done very well. It looks good. I like the way that the shortcut is hidden behind a cutout, implying a mushroom must be used to pull it off. The statues of Daisy, Luigi, Baby Luigi, and this useless sack of shit are all beautiful too, and the additional boost panels around the U-turns are nice to have too. I am disappointed that Toad's Factory didn't get in, as I think we can all agree it would be far from a bad choice to be in its place. But I also can't complain about its inclusion. Overall, this track gets a 7 out of 10. It's alright. The next track we have is Piranha Plant Cove. Now, I know that some people are disappointed that Piranha Plant Pipeline didn't get in, but as someone from the UK, I can confirm that it would be weird to have Piranha Plant Pipeline and Piranha Plant Pipeway in the same game. I don't know why it was named that way, but that's another story for another track. Piranha Plant Cove is a very good track. Wow, I've said that a lot in this video. I think something's changed. Piranha Plant Cove is a track that I've wanted for a while, and I'm very happy it's here. Thematically, it's brilliant. The music also really tickled something in my ears, and I love it so much. It feels like something I'd hear in Legoland or something, and I love it. It suits the track so well. The track utilises the underwater mechanic to its fullest potential, and the trick locations and split paths really add to the gameplay of this track. I really have no gripes about this track. It's really good, and overall, I think this is the second 10 out of 10 track we've got in this DLC. It's brilliant. I have nothing bad to say about it. The next track, and the first track in the final cup, is Madrid Drive. To be honest, I can't say anything about this track overly stood out to me, which is weird. The rest of the newer tour tracks I love. Oh my god, William is back! Actually no, this is his Spanish cousin, Carlos. Though this track does have its unique elements, like the gallery, food courts, and football stadium that has Karibo's shoe kicking footballs around in it. Okay, I really like that detail. Half because I love Karibo's shoe. I can't say I feel overly strong about this track. The music is nice, and I love how it changes to include chanting in the main melody in the football stadium. It's got good elements to it, but it does feel a bit samey at times. Overall, I'll rate this track a 6 out of 10. It's not bad, but after playing tracks like Rome Avanti, Athens Dash and Vancouver Velocity, it's hard to get excited for Madrid. Also again, I'm happy I did my research because I was very prepared to go into this video pronouncing it Madrid. Yeah, that wouldn't have gone down, would it? Next up, we have Rosalina's Ice World. Where the fucking what we have now? Rosalina's Ice World really caught me off guard with this wave, as I would have expected something like Wario Shipyard or Maka Woohoo. And this track has penguins. 10 out of 10. I joke. While I think this track is weaker than some of the other 3DS tracks, especially on the name and theming, I still enjoy it. I like the split paths towards the end, the addition of a shortcut at the end, and the change between lap 1 and 2 that forces most drivers to take the bottom path. Rosalina's Ice World was a surprising addition, and definitely one that I can't complain about. I'll be giving it a 7 out of 10. It's cool. No pun intended. The next track we have is a track that I am incredibly happy to see. SNES Bowser Castle 3. I am one of the very rare Mario Kart fans that really enjoys Super Mario Kart, even if I do kinda suck at it. The tracks are some of my favourites, even if they're simple. Cooper Beach 1 is a track that I was hoping for in the back of my mind. SNES Rainbow Road has only gotten better the more it's seen. Ghost Valley is seemingly ignored, and Choco Island. When it came between SNES Bowser Castle 3 and GBA Bowser Castle 4, it was a case of you could put a gun to my head and force me to choose, and I couldn't give you an answer. I love both, but in the end, I'm very happy that SNES got the love. The main thing that stood out to me was the music. This, like with DS Mario Circuit, was the first time we've heard this music be made, and fuck do I love it. It's exactly what I wanted for a remaster of the SNES Bowser Castle music. As for the track itself, I'm surprised it didn't stay flat, but I'm happy it experimented with the Z-axis, and it was done flawlessly. The usage of anti-gravity was perfect too, and going down this section is the most thrilling experience that we've got in a SNES track. Also visually, this track is stunning. Considering that this is the first and only retro Bowser Castle track that we got in the whole game, I'm happy they didn't fuck around with it. It's brilliant. And you know what? I think this track is going to have to share Yoshi's Island and Piranha Plants Cove's ranking and be the third 10 out of 10 track. I love it. It's exactly what I could have asked for, and nothing about it disappointed me. And the final track of Wave 6, and thus the final track in this mini-series, is Wii Rainbow Road. Wait, did Nintendo finish the Booster Course Pass on both the Bowser Castle and Rainbow Road as the last two tracks? Well played, Nintendo. Well fucking played. And they did not disappoint. Wii Rainbow Road was captured perfectly with every detail, to the sounds, visuals, gameplay. Nothing about this track was sacrificed for any reason, unlike some of the other tracks in this DLC. I made a video a while back ranking every Rainbow Road track, and in that video I said that Wii Rainbow Road was my favourite, just behind DS Rainbow Road. And this remake I put in the same place, if not higher than the original. I still love DS Rainbow Road, so it's still my overall favourite. And as much as I am disappointed that I didn't get in, especially due to the inversions, I can't deny that I love the remake of Wii Rainbow Road. Though I think my favourite detail, which I only found out because I'm shit at the game, is the fact that upon falling off, the fire effect of falling off in the original has been translated into the remake. This detail is something that we haven't seen in any other track, and I love it. It's perfect. Overall, I'm going to rank this track at 9 out of 10. It misses the mark for not being DS Rainbow Road. I'm half joking, it's more due to the fact that it didn't have the same effect on me that Yoshi's Island or SNES Bowser Castle 3 did. And that concludes my opinions on Wave 6 of the DLC. I'm going to give this wave a 9 out of 10. I wouldn't call any track bad necessarily, but Madrid could be better and Daisy Circuit could have been Toad's Factory. But overall there's a brilliant selection of tracks and I can't really say much bad about it overall. A brilliant end to the DLC. And that is it for the Booster Course Pass in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Overall, the entire DLC will get a rating of 7.5 out of 10. I think most of the issues I had with the tracks have been rectified in the last few waves. And while I still mostly play online with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so I'm still not planning to buy the DLC, I can see the worth of it a whole lot more now than I did before, so I would consider it more. The one thing I've neglected to mention is these 5 tracks. None of these tracks were added, however these 8 were. Add on the 3 in the base game, and that's all the Wii tracks. In other words, 11 out of 16 Wii tracks are in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I can't help but find the Wii fan service a bit much, especially when so many other amazing tracks didn't make the cut, and I'm saying that as a Mario Kart Wii enjoyer. Overall though, I do have to say that the DLC is worth buying in my opinion. I'm just poor, salty about no Rob, and don't play enough offline to justify it. Mainly the last point if I'm being honest. If you enjoyed this mini-series, please do leave a like and leave a comment on what your opinions on the DLC. Love it or hate it? Do you agree with my rankings? Let me know. I'd love to hear your opinions, when you're not a twat about it. I have some more Nintendo related content upcoming, so be sure to subscribe to see when that comes out. And until next time, goodbye.